Fearlessly plunging into the rust reef of the Frost Hollow like some many-limbed gibbering eldritch horror, casting an electronic screech onto every vox frequency that will take it. We are the unrelenting, skittering, and clawing thing of rebellion, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. My misadventures tonight are taking me deep into the Underhive's past, into the forgotten warrens of the Rust Reef, all in search of those shiny, archaeotech gubbins. My guide, as always, is our infamous treasure hunter and rogue archaeo savant Chac. And tell me, what exactly are we down here for today?
A little of this and a little of that. Maybe with some squishy bits still attached.
Is that more valuable when there's still squishy bits
No,
attached?
but there's been a rash of people having cybernetics stolen. I figure we can pick up some and resell them for a nice, tidy little profit.
Used Cybernetics Emporium. Armed, as always, with what some say is an unhealthy amount of plasma weaponry and the willingness to slag first and never ask follow-up questions, I am your host, Goblin King. Joined today by my partner in all things grave robbing down here in the rust reef of the Frost Hollow, it's Chac.
Hey, guys.
And this is episode 118, which is our celebration of Innsmouth's Compliance Day. So just like we do during Christmas when we do a Sanguinilla special, we are bringing you a July 4th special, so to speak, Compliance Day, as it's called in the Imperium. You know, the day that the Imperium took your planet away from you, the day the Imperium removed your independence. There's a joke. There's a deeper satirical joke in there.
No, it's the day the Imperium reminded us that we were citizens.
And therefore could enjoy independence. Got it. Understood. But if you're if you're here in the United States, happy 4th of July. If you are up in Canada, happy Canada Day. And if you're in the UK, happy voting for a new Parliament Day. If you're anywhere else, happy July 4th, as in just the 4th day of July. We're an American-based podcast, as you can probably tell by our atrocious American accents. But we like to have a little bit of fun. You know, we do our Sanguinilla special. We do usually a Halloween special. We're kind of working into our Hive lore, into the lore of Arconia and the lore of the Carcosan sector, all of these different imperial festivals that are celebrated specifically by the citizens in this area. One of the interesting things that I came across, Chuck, when I was researching the existing festivals and the existing celebrations, because that's something in creative writing, like civilization, you look at like calendar and festivities. There's not a lot of very well defined festivals in the Imperium, which
There's
it's
Sanguinilla.
interesting. There's Sanguinilla, yeah, and that's pretty much it. There's a couple of others. There's a smattering of them, but they're like one-liners.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're doing. You know, we have the Feast of the Emperor's Ascension. We have Sanguinilla in the Innsmouth Underhive. We're just kind of we're teasing out and coming up with new stuff. It makes the world feel more lived in. I'm sure what we'll end up having happen at some point is we'll talk about the development of calendars and festivals as far as world building goes, and we'll dump a lot more of what we've come up with out there. But the subject of today's conversation, this kind of bonus episode, not necessarily a bonus episode, but more of a roundtable episode, if you will, are either armies that we want to see major changes to, or armies that we would like to see actually come to the tabletop. Things that might either be missing from gameplay as is, or might be missing as far as like the content of the entire universe goes. This will also be a little bit different than our normal episodes because, as you'll notice, there's only Chac and I here, but you're going to hear from all four of us. So Emmy and Drew are also recording their own set of information, and then they'll send that to me. And then you guys will get a jump cut at some point, probably mid-episode, and it'll move over to Drew and Emmy as they talk about their two chosen subjects. But Chac and I are here first. And Chac, I know that you've got some night stuff that you want to talk over.
Yeah.
Do you want to lead us off here? You want to talk a little bit about the old knight lore, and then kind of how you'd like to see knights expand, because the knights books are pretty shallow right now, right? I mean,
this is the problem.
Okay.
They're knights as they are right now aren't really a good army. And I'm not talking about playability.
Yeah, they've got a huge expanse of lore, but not like the models.
Right. So I started playing Knights when it was Adeptus or Titan Legions or the first Adeptus Titanicus.
Right.
And here's my Knight and Titan army that, well, as much of it as I have built. I have more Titans and probably more Knights kicking around.
So these are Warhounds, right? These two silver guys, these two white metal guys,
Yeah,
kind of in the middle.
those are unpainted Warhounds. I've got, okay, if you zoom in, I've got some Reaver Titans. I've got a painted Warhound in the back there. I've got a couple of them. I've got a, what's the Psycho Knight? That's the Psycho Titan, the
Psi
Titan.
Titan.
That's a very rare Psi Titan. I've got two. One of these is a Warmonger, Imperator class. The other one is just a regular Imperator class. And I have a third one of those. So I've got another. And then I've
Oh
got a
wow.
bunch of like Reavers and Warhounds, the Reavers and War Master unbuilt also. So I've got a lot of these. Which, if you want to know about what I want to use, this also ties into using 3mm stuff because these are all actually. Remember, Epic was nominally 6mm scale, but all the
Right.
Titans were really 2mm scale, and the Knights were someplace in between.
Okay. It's not quite the scale that you think it is,
Yeah,
right?
you know, so you know, from on all in all game systems, the vehicles are always smaller than they should be. You're like you look at a Rhino and you're like you're supposed to fit 10 Space Marines in that. And then you go down and you look at Epic, and the vehicles were much smaller than the stands of troops and the whole thing. You could actually see some Rhinos in this picture and a
Yeah,
couple
and the
of
little troops
really
down there.
old school Epic troops. So this is obviously this is not Legions Imperialis. This is old school Epic and Adeptus Titanicus. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that the Knight armies were a little different, and actually Knights played much better with Imperial Guard back in the day. And they would have their own troops. And if you read the lore books, you also talk about there's like Tech Guard and all that move along with the Knights and the Titans.
And there's the like men at arms
Yeah.
and stuff, like the guys that are training to be the Knight and Titan
Or
pilots, right?
just screening them, just protecting
Right.
them from some random little dude running up with a crack missile and shooting it up the tailpipe of a Knight.
Right.
So we all know sort of the lore that is built up from, when did they first come out? Was it 2007? Did the new Knights come out?
New Knights released Imperial Knights Codex was the first one. That's a really great question. That's something I should have had on the top of my head. I want to say it was 7th edition. Maybe it was 8th edition.
I think it was 8th edition.
Let me see. Was there a 7th edition one? There was a 7th edition one. So it looks like they came back in 7th edition.
7th edition. And they came back as 28mm models. They were never 28 before that. They were only Epic.
May 2015-ish.
And they sort of came back as sort of construction equipment that had been repurposed to protect the planets. But that's not exactly what the first lore was. It was close. And it's close in a way that's also close to an army that is near and dear to Goblin King's heart, and that is they're tied very closely to Eldar Exodites.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to read you something. This is from White Dwarf 97, issue 97, from way, way back. Okay. That one has the first introduction to
oh, there we go.
Yeah.
That's another cover. Who is that? Is that supposed to be Marathi?
It could be. I don't know. You read through the table of contents, they'll probably tell you who's in it. But let me read this. As Goblin King gets lost on the beautiful artwork. Long before the dark age of technology, numerous barren planets were visited by Eldar seed ships. These inhospitable worlds were prepared for the long process of terraforming, then seeded with the essential ingredients to sustain life. The Eldar plan was to create new worlds to colonize in thousands of years' time. These worlds were known to the Eldar as some Eldar word, or maiden worlds.
The Lebban, I think.
the Letban,
Yeah,
something
the
like that.
Letban yeah.
As their civilization neared its collapse, numerous Eldar groups denounced the easy decadence offered by chaos and abandoned their homeworlds in a series of migrations they called the Exodus, referring to themselves as Exodites. These groups traveled far away and colonized the Maiden Worlds, determined to escape the terrible fall of their race that they had foreseen. On their arrival, the Exodites split into individual clans, each led by a warrior elite. Those who joined the Exodus came from all levels of Eldar society, but were united in their determination and powerful will to survive. The Exodites were a group which had long been aware of the dangers of indulgence and hedonism. By choice, they selected worlds where their life could be could be hard so as to avoid the trap of sloth. To a great extent, this suppressed the natural Eldar character of intense emotion and intellect. So basically, the Eldar went to these night worlds, to these maiden worlds. And the thing is, in order to produce the food necessary to trade with the craft worlds, these are the Exodites, the oceans of the planets were seeded with algae to form vast floating weed beds. These weed beds and the lush vegetation of the primitive jungles provided nourishment for the docile brontosaurus like herd beasts called the megasaurs, created by the Knights through cloning and genetic engineering. So
And
the
then they
Eldar
spread them
Knights,
basically everywhere.
yes, the Eldar Knights created the Megasaurs and they seeded them everywhere. That's why you have dinosaurs everywhere where you have these maiden worlds. And they were basically herded by Exodite Knights.
And if you guys want a deeper look at the Exodites themselves, and because I don't, I'm assuming you're not going to we're not going to do a full Exodite episode right now.
No,
We
I'm
actually
just talking about this is we want to talk about where Knights came from.
laying it out. We did cover the Exodites in episode 50, Aeldari Exodites. So there's a little bit deeper into the Exodites and all the stuff that Chac just mentioned, kind of as an overview. I always love the why is there dinosaurs everywhere? Because the Eldar put them everywhere.
Yes, and they put them everywhere because they needed food for the craft worlds. And then
Yeah.
the men came, the coming of men. And this is the Eldar write this down. And what happened is that when the humans came to these worlds, they basically copied what the Eldar were doing.
Right.
They kicked the Eldar off, and then they started harvesting the Megasaurians to feed Hive worlds. And they needed knights to herd them, just like the Eldar did. And then
Yeah.
what happens? Then you go through everything else. You know, they were rediscovered with the when the Imperium was being reunified, but they'd already been fighting the Eldar on these planets. And so when knights were first introduced, what you had was you had two types of you had Eldar knights and you had human knights, and those
Right.
were the opposing forces. And both of them had. If you go down to it's the color plate there. Oop, yeah, there you go. So you can see the various different goofy looking human knights and the various goofy looking Eldar knights.
And for those of you guys listening, if you wanted to, jump on over to Google and type in epic knights, you'll get some idea of what we're talking about. Or if you want, you can join us on Patreon for $3, $6, or $9 today until our legacy spots are filled anyway. But you can join us for $3, $6, or $9, and you can get access to a video version of the podcast too, and you can kind of see what we're talking about. But yeah, just to give a really quick visual, I guess, explanation, if I can. You've got knights that look quite a bit, I would say, quite a bit like the form factor of knights we have today.
Mhm.
Very, very similar. That high house Balmaris knight that's there in the top corner has a very similar silhouette to
Yeah.
what the knights have now. But then you've got things that look pretty fun and pretty goofy. I really like the all leg guy with
Yeah.
just a gun arm, which definitely has a very Eldari head. It's very Eldari Wraith Knight legs and a Wraith Knight, super miniature Wraith Knight torso, and then a pretty standard Eldar head with the Eldar back fins, and then just one gun. And then there's the centaur, which are, again, Eldari Wraith Knight legs, but
Yeah.
in a centaur pattern with a giant lance, which is a pretty cool one. And then the chicken walker looking guy is pretty neat too. Even it has a beak and then a big gun mounted onto his back, just to give you guys kind of an idea of what some of these things
I
look
actually
like.
have one of those. I've got
Oh, that's awesome.
I sent you some pictures or some little videos, but they'd probably play sound anyway. I've got the chicken leg one and sort of the salamander leg one, both from House Warwick.
Okay.
Games Workshop was experimenting, and these are goofy and fun. I mean, some of them I think are really fun. Some of them look like spiders, some of them look like birds. Well,
Right.
spiders with only 4 legs, but they still give a sort of an insect-looking thing. And
The tracked one's pretty cool
yeah,
too. I don't even know what you'd call that, but the one that's like all track
yeah,
legs
that's
essentially.
well, they reuse some of the same classes, but they look completely different these days. They pretty much settled on the Questoris Knight pattern, and then they have a couple of other. So
Right.
if you go down to the next color plate, they've got some like these like they call them squires and lords. Anyway, these just look completely
The
different.
yeah, so the knight looks a lot like a knight. The wardens look either like tank tracked with like almost like a dog-headed
Yeah,
body. The squires are super tall with long legs and a lance, which is pretty neat. And then the lords almost look like crabs.
yeah.
It's pretty fun. There's some really cool stuff here.
And actually,
Uh,
as you played, they would advance in ranks if they survived.
that's cool. That's super cool. But yeah, you guys should either join us on Patreon or I check out Chalk on TikTok because he's got several of his little videos. They're not, for whatever reason, they're not pulling up. They won't go to the web right now. But you can find Chalk on TikTok and you can see some of the night stuff that he's painted, which is really cool looking. He's got some revolving images of all that stuff.
So the topic we have is how would we like things to be changed? And the way I see it, the knights are no longer they're not a complete army,
Yeah,
and they don't have anybody to fight, really. So you've got like well, what used to be 3 types of knights, now it's more,
one.
but
Yeah.
you've got the small guys, the Helverons and the
Oh, yeah, that's true. The war dogs,
yeah,
or
the war
not war
dogs.
dogs. That's what chaos
That's what's
calls them. But
chaos ones.
essentially, yeah,
The armigers,
Helverins,
you have the armigers,
armature. There
which
you
are
go.
the small ones, and those are your battle line troops if you're playing the game. And so you're
Right,
using giant robots to hold objectives.
right.
And then you've got your Questoris Knights, which are the ones everybody thinks of, and you have a whole bunch of different patterns. And then what you used to have is just the forge rolled ones, and they had the Cerastus and the Porphyrion, the really expensive ones, which are now coming out in
The
plastic.
stuff that's slowly rolling into plastic.
But nobody played those because they didn't want to spend $500 for a night,
Right.
basically. Now you can get the Cerastus, especially because they're doing it for Horus Heresy. You can get those in plastic. But the problem is twofold. One, you don't really want to be using your giant robots for holding objectives.
Right.
Because actually, if somebody knows they're playing knights, knights can get taken down pretty easily. Last time I played my knights, it was against custodes, and man, they just got cut down like butter.
Oh yeah, you get focus fired.
Yeah. Or if you went up against orcs and they have and they're running beast snaggers with the Great Hunt, I'm sure that your knights would go down really quick.
Right.
So what they need is they need other units. Now you can always add in an agent of the Imperium, like an Inquisitor with some like naval boarding
Rating
troops or
or
ratings or
rating,
whatever
yeah.
they're called, or an assassin or two.
Well, then in a lot of cases, you can roll knights into your Space Marine or your Imperial Guard too.
You
But
can roll one knight.
yeah, but it feels disjointed,
Yeah,
or your Mechanicum, but it feels disjointed. They need their own troops.
they
They
need
need
their
their
own
own
troops.
battle line troop
Yeah,
choice. Yeah.
they should have their own battle line troop choice and effective ones. They should have like man of arms. In Epic, it was great. You would have them with Rough Riders.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say that's one of the interesting things about the lore and even the current lore. Well, I guess it's kind of fading out, but the lore as of like 7th, 8th edition, the guys that were training to be knights pilots were either on, like you said, Rough Riders. They were either on horseback or they were on bikes. or some other small, like,
Put them in
horse
sentinels or
size or
something.
bark. Yeah, yeah. And they were piloting those for, and like if they made so many, you kind of have to come up the ranks a little bit. You have to be a dude on the ground with a rifle before you can be a dude in a combat walker,
Mhm.
before you can be a dude in a Helvrim, before you can be a dude that even tries to bond with a
Yeah.
knight. Like you have to go through all of these processes.
And or if you're in the Mechanicus, if you're a Mechanicus aligned, they would have, Skitarii or Tech Guard following these guys along.
Right.
It was more of a combined arms. And so what I would
Right.
like to see is, like, some actual units, and I'm not talking about, like, Space Marine clones or whatever, but I would envision it more like guard armies or guard contingents. Like, you could take or you'd have a compulsory 25% of your army would be guard units or something like that, just to make it a little bit more, I don't know, realistic. That's one thing. The other is I wish a lot of the other factions have the equivalent of knights. Like Eldar has a knight.
Yeah, they've got the Wraith
Um,
Lord,
you have some, Tau has like the
Storm
Riptile or the
Surge,
Storm Surge or
Riptide,
Riptide. Um,
and then they've got, well, I think they're legends now, but they had the Arvarna. They had a couple of like specialized heavy
yeah.
suits.
And you have Biotitans for the bugs.
Not Eld. I almost said Eldar.
I know. I okay
Tyranids.
for the Tyranids.
Tyranids.
But those are all like one-off units.
Well, and like the Wraith Knight comes with two configurations. You've got a sword and a shield configuration, and you've got dual gun configuration. There used to be a configuration that was a Wraith Knight or Wraith Lord, so it was a psionic one. The Tyranids, you've got the barbed Herodule and you've got the scythed Herodule. So you've got the Herodule that shoots and you've got the one with the claws. But the Herodules, I think, are legends at this point. Hopefully, they're coming back in plastic. But yeah, you're right. It really is. The Storm Surge is a one-trick pony. The Riptide has two different ways you can build it, but it's just a different gun. It's not
Yeah.
like a complete different configuration.
Well, I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
Questors are the same sort of way. You've got like 4 different configurations you can put them in,
Right. Right.
depending on the weapons. I would just be nice to see that, knight against
Knight.
knight basically
Yeah.
have equivalent armies for
Yeah.
the other factions.
Here's a question for you. In your thought process for like a fully fledged out like knight household army. There we
Mhm.
go. Those are the words I'm looking for. Would you think tanks and like war suits, like and smaller war
Yeah.
suits, like picture a guardsman wearing power. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Like because guardsmen are talked about in lore as having access to power armor. It's different than Space Marine power
Yeah.
armor. So like almost like the power loader from Aliens, but with guns on it.
Yeah, no, I would definitely I would like to see, and I think that's a really good idea. I was thinking about just because if you go over to our Discord and you go down to I haven't used it for a long time, but I have a little section of my own fiction in the Hyperborean worlds. I think I wrote about the my knight household, and I talked about like they had the red shanks because their legs get dyed red with the blood of their enemies. The
Nice.
that's actually a historical Scottish mercenary group. Was called the Red Shanks for that reason. But they were basically sort of like it's the equivalent of the PDF or the Guard Regiment that's drawn from they were like feudal levy troops or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. They're drawn from the night
They're
world.
drawn from the night world, and their job is basically, or part of it, some of them get assigned to the knights, and they work as like screening forces, and I would definitely see them as being, well, they have to be mechanized in some place. They'd have to be like a mechanized assault force because otherwise they couldn't keep
Yeah.
up with the knights.
I had done the same thing with House Carastus, like when I wrote their lore. So House Carastus, which is in the Skaldmar worlds and is my household knight army, which is really weird because I bought all the knights for it and then I made them all into Gene Stealer knights because I'm crazy and decided I needed Gene Stealer Cult Knights instead. But anyway,
That's pretty cool.
uh, um, yeah, you can find those on my Instagram and on my TikTok, and probably somewhere on our Discord if you look really hard. But anyway, I had decided that originally I had decided to use the Atlan Jackals, the like dirt bikes from the Gene Stealer cult, and then put Clan Escher people on the bikes. And then as I started actually working on the first couple of conversions, I didn't like the way the size looked because the Atlan Jackal, the Atlan Jackal, I think is like the the actual hero unit. I'm blanking on but the dirt bikes, the Gene Stealer
Mhm.
called dirt bikes and ATV set. It's a really cool set, but they look cool for Gene Stealers, but they kind of look a little weird when you try to make them anything in the like Imperial Guard-ish world. So what I actually settled on later, and I only did one test conversion. I should probably like change out the blue tack for actual green stuff and finish it and release it. But it's a Sister of Battle with most of her like regalia removed. It's all scratched off, so it's just battle armor on an Outrider bike from Space Marines. And that was my idea of like mechanized like squire, essentially the squire force for House Carastus. The
Mhm.
people who are training to be knights, they ride Outrider bikes out in front of the knights.
That's cool.
Um, but it's one of those things like there's no rules to you're literally like, I mean, piecing together 4 or 5 different sets to fill a hole that's suggested by the lore. Like you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Like, yeah, anyway.
Well, one of the things that it seems like so, people wanted knights, they wanted big stompy robots. I get it. I like big
Who
stompy
doesn't?
robots.
Right.
And but it just doesn't feel like a complete army, and I'm afraid that it'll, I
It
mean,
won't go anywhere essentially. Like
it
it'll
won't go
fizzle.
anywhere, it'll just sort of fizzle out and stagnate
Yeah.
like the Eldar. Um, they're
Yeah.
finally getting some new
Unfortunately.
units. But, like, right now, it's being some of the releases are being driven by, Horus Heresy,
Yeah.
which
Well, and a lot of the releases for the the 10th edition, which is the contemporary edition of the game right now, are being driven by essentially Space Marine.
yeah.
There was this really big push of Space Marines and not Necrons, Space Marines and Tyranids, but now that we're a year in, it's pretty much just new Space Marine stuff.
Oh,
And
it's
yeah,
always just new Space Marine stuff.
I know.
Um, so th
But you like to hope that it's going to be new. And there's some really cool new kind of to your point of giving knights something big to fight. Tyranids, they've got the Norn Emissary and the Norn Assassin now, which are also big, huge models. There's the Hive Tyrants. The new Hive Tyrant model, I'm pretty sure, is a little bit bigger than the old Hive Tyrant models were. You obviously have Carnifexes, which these are things. Carnifexes are probably like Helgrin, and Armiger level rather than Knight level. But
well,
still, like
that's
it
what you
gives you
need.
something to
You need
fight,
you need a couple of the armature scale
right?
and a couple of big guys. Um,
Well, and the Necrons could easily fall into that too. We've already got a couple of synaptic creatures like the millipedes. I can't remember their name off
yeah.
the top of my head, but the crypt crawlers essentially. Those things are pretty big. You've got a couple of big war walkers, the War of the Worlds looking doomsday arc things for the Necrons. And
Yeah.
obviously the Necrons there's no reason that the Necron couldn't have like a warrior suspended inside like a knight jelly suit. Essentially, like there's a Necron warrior that actually be really cool, like a Necron warrior, and you can actually see it in the chest of a big like knight-sized
Yeah.
warwalker for the Necrons. There's some really interesting, like in-depth, cool knight expansions, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, what they finally did is for Legions Imperialis, their last release is people like Knights and Titans. They just do.
Right.
And so when they basically I think they're basically killing off Adeptus Titanicus. But the newest book that they came out, which is the Great Slaughter, lets you build 100% Knight and Titan armies.
Nice.
So I think a lot of the Knight stuff is being, like I said, is being driven by the specialty games. And I have to say, the more and more GW does some of the stuff that they do, the more and more that the Horus Heresy Age of Darkness game appeals to me. You guys know, if you've listened to this for any amount of time, my opinion on Space Marine versus Space Marine action, hot
Well,
Space Marine on Space Marine action.
it's a little boring.
Yeah, but the Horus Heresy game feels more like a historical war game, and they aren't screwing. It's not a meta chasing game.
Yet.
There is no.
Yet.
Yeah. Well, that's right now. There is no real meta. Well, it's sort of different
Right.
because you're all playing the same thing.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah, there's
basically.
not a lot.
I mean, there are. You can play Talons of the Emperor, which is Custodes, and should I use the real name, not the Sisters of
Just
Silence?
call them Sisters of
Yeah,
Silence.
the Anathema Psychana, and you can play. They finally came out with a Mechanicus plastic set, which looks really cool. I don't play, but it makes me want to buy it anyway.
Yeah, there's some really cool figures in there.
But like I said, the Cerastus Knight is marketed specifically as an Age of Darkness model, not as a 40K model.
As of recording, the 10th edition Night book isn't out yet,
No.
so it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Which means I have to spend another $60 to play an army I have. Well, I don't have to, but honestly, I like having.
I've always liked having that. As much as I bitch about codex creep, I also like having all the codexes.
I don't have every codex, but I have codexes that I might. I've got like Space Marine. I keep on going. I'm going to start an Imperial Fist army. No, I'm going to start a Dark Angels army.
Just do kill teams. Do an Imperial Fist kill team.
I have all the. I've got like the Bastion box set. I've got. It's like, oh, that's not a bad price. I haven't seen that before. I'll grab that.
I have a lot of you guys who have been listening to the podcast for a while know that Minion Coffin and I came up with essentially a loyalist Death Guard army concept that was based on the Aeldari essentially perfecting the Primaris technology so they could uplift any surviving guardsmen found on the field into new Primaris reinforcements for this specific group. And I came up with all this stuff, which is why the army can. I know they're 100, but they are heretical as far as the Imperium is concerned. However, they are anti-Nurgle, and they are technically loyalists because they are the children of Isha.
Right.
Because Isha whispers from Nurgle's garden all of the ways to like fix corruption. So basically, the whole idea behind these guys is that like on really really bad battlefields with the Imperium forces being pinned down, these loyalist looking death guard would show up and they would fight off the death guard that was there, and then they would either leave, and then those guardsmen would spread the story of these like almost Legion of the Damned style force that was showing up, or they would rescue all the guardsmen off the planet, and then all those guardsmen would go back and they would be given an offer by the Aeldari Farseer of basically like, I can uplift you into a Primaris Marine, or you can find a place, you can find a life here in the craft worlds, essentially. And like this Eldar Farseer is even a heretic to our own people. So it's literally like the craft world and the craft world that allies with her. Like the Eldari don't appreciate what she's doing either, but she's essentially fighting for Isha. But it was the whole idea of doing like, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to do like I'm sorry, I'm completely lying. There was a meme of a loyalist death guard that started all of this, but I wanted to kind of also do like an idea of like how to do female space marines within existing lore. So if somebody wanted to play around with the idea of female space marines without going against what's written in the Horus Heresy books, the whole idea, well, Eldar have perfected the technology of making a marine a Primaris, so they can take anybody who exists, so a veteran female adult Imperial Guard, and make her into a female Space Marine. It was just kind of like my little in-universe loop.
Yeah.
But so because of that, I got the whole point of this. I got that shield host box because exactly what you're talking about. I was like, this is too good of a deal to pass up. It has, I think it's got 2 of the floaty tanks in it, which I can't remember their names. It's got like 4 of the No, it's got 2 of the Primaris units, and then it was a good box for the value, essentially, so I grabbed it, and I put it aside to work on this project at some point, and then I decided that I was only gonna ever do a kill team of this project, which I've already done, and now I'm doing I'm gonna do Ashen Claw. It's an entire army
Well,
of Ashen Claw. I'm
I
doing
know.
what you're doing.
Well, then I keep on saying, well,
Like 5
you
ideas.
know that I like, Iron Warriors, and I like the
Right.
Loyalists, and so my thing's like, well, they're just the surviving Terran-born Iron
Yeah, Iron
Warriors, and they go
Warriors,
back to
right.
the Dusk Raiders,
Yeah, exactly. You can play around with yeah.
and, I would love to do, like, a Black Shield army, or you could play Loyalist traders in, Age of Darkness, too.
And we've talked about Dusk Raiders, by the way, became the Death
Yeah.
Guard.
No, they didn't. They became, did they become the Death Guard? They did become the
Yeah,
Death Guard. Which were
they're
the
the Death
ones
Guard.
that, that were the,
I think the Iron Warriors were always the Iron
yeah, I
Warriors.
don't think, I think they were just labeled the number.
Yeah. But yeah, the Terran-born Iron Warriors. Oh
They were given
man,
the
what
shit
did
jobs anyway if they weren't killed.
yeah. Yeah, no shit, right? That happened a lot. Obviously, as we've been covering everything in the Horus Heresy, we keep coming across that. I cannot remember what they used to be called. They did used to be called something else. My brain is completely blanking. But you may have been right. They may have just been called by their number legion. But anyway,
Yeah, they were the 4th Legion.
it'd be cool to see Black Legion, or not Black Legion, Black Shields, Iron
Yeah.
Warriors.
You should really not, like, put Ryan and me on a podcast and not with a script, because we'll just ramble about other things.
There's totally so many like different little like prod. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So my big thing is I'd like to see knights as a more complete army, and maybe give them something more to fight. Because, like, yes, you can pull all the other factions can put up knight equivalents. Well, not like
Right,
Imperial Guard, but I think
right.
they're pretty much the only one, and Space Marines. Okay, all these Xenos races can put up a knight equivalent, pretty much. But there's not like a big stompy robot codex.
Yeah.
Somebody else, they get their own codex. Like, why isn't there an Eldar? Well, why isn't there an Exodite codex? But why isn't there an
Yeah.
Exodite Knight codex?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
And it's a place that they can and kind of their whole reason that we're tackling this subject is there's a problem in 40K. And the problem in 40K is that a lot of the game has moved towards just Space Marines. And there's Space Marines are cool. There's definitely some interesting things with Space Marines. And I know that there's a lot of people who play Space Marines. Space Marines have a lot of fans, but the whole idea of the game is that you have interesting and unique opposition that you can play against. The reason that we watch sci-fi movies, the reason that we watch horror films, the reason that we get into science, this isn't entirely true because obviously things like The Expanse exist. But like when you get into fantasy and you get into science fiction, you kind of get into it a little bit because of the creatures and the monsters. Like that's kind of the draw. And even if you're a big fan of the Space Marines, you don't necessarily want to play against other Space Marines. You want to play against really cool other things. You want to play against other cool monsters and all of that. And this is, with your knight example, you're pulling up exactly what it is. Because essentially what you have now is you either have knight household versus knight household. So my Imperial aligned knight household
Hmm.
against your Imperial
Or
allied
chaos.
household, or you've got Imperium versus Chaos, or you've maybe got Mechanicus versus Imperium. But you're right. Like, okay, great. Maybe maybe you've got a Tyrannid buddy who has all the big bugs and he wants to have a big bug bash. Like, that's fun as shit.
But the
You get
rules
that.
should be a little. See, the thing is that when you have the Imperial Knights, they have their own detachment rules. They have
Right.
their own enhancements. They have everything like that. Whereas if you are playing Tyranids or Eldar and you pull them up, they don't have that.
You don't have a detachment. Right.
You aren't playing. What you're doing is you're playing Eldar that brought big robots. You aren't
Yeah.
playing.
Or you're playing a super specialized list that isn't going to stand up in a game.
Yeah. And this is, that on the channel that we talk a lot about world building and sort of like campaign style play, role play.
More
Not role
narrative.
play.
Yeah.
We're not that sort of podcast, but role playing games. But when I build an army, I build a story in my head.
Yeah, it's collaborative. That the whole reason all of us are into it is collaborative
Yeah,
storytelling.
and I
Like
want to
we
play
want,
a story.
yeah,
What I don't want to be, I don't want to go to my local game night and be like, I brought Ultramarines. What did you bring? I brought Ultramarines too. Well, why do you have two groups of Ultramarines fighting each other? That's because I don't play competitive 40K and I don't
yeah.
play to the meta or anything like that. So I'll be like, why are these two loyalist armies from the same chapter fighting each other?
Well, and we've actually got even if that is your flavor of 40K, because it is people's flavor of 40K.
Yeah.
We actually have a really good thing going on, a really good story seed going on to even foster those types of games right now. The Cicadrix Maledictum split the galaxy into two, and we have the Imperium of Man, and then we have the Imperium Nihilus. And it very much felt like they were going to play around with that a little
No.
bit, but this is the perfect opportunity. Maybe, and there are ways to salvage it now, lore wise. Maybe Dorn comes back as much as
Dorn will come
I
back,
kind.
but he won't be the next
It's
one. It'll be
it's kind of, yeah. As much as it's kind of eye rolly to talk about more Primarchs coming back, but if Dorn came back and Dorn was immediately like, Gilliman, you're doing it wrong, then you've got the Imperium Secundus at Ultramar, and you've got the Imperium of Terra as its own thing, and then you could even play with an Imperium Nihilus in version of the Imperium as well. You could end up with like 3 or 4 Imperial factions really easily.
well.
And like this is a thing that kind of existed in Warhammer Fantasy, because you had the Empire,
Mhm.
and the Empire allied with Britain. Not it's not. Is it Brittany? Bretonia.
Bretonia.
There we go. Sorry. They allied with Bretonia, and they allied with Kislev, and they allied with. But that didn't necessarily mean that they were always together. And we kind of have that opportunity right now, and Games Workshop isn't really
No, 'cause
capitalizing on
from
it.
what I think, what they did the whole. So they started off with the whole Rift, and they started off with
Right.
the Crusade. What was that box called back when they started that? But
There
anyway,
was Dark Imperium
yeah.
was the first one. Yeah.
And then it's like,
And then the
we
Indominus Crusade's probably the one
yeah,
you're
the
thinking of.
Indominus Crusade, and then 10th edition was like, well, we want to sell Tyranids. So that whole storyline with the rift across the galaxy and chaos everywhere. Let's just
And
forget that. And now the Tyranids are invading, and we have to deal with that. It seems like there
yeah.
was a huge storytelling opportunity.
And there's 3 partial stories happening right now. We've got the Pariah Nexus happening.
Hmm.
We've got the chaos. We've got the Arcs of Omen happening, and we have the Tyrannic. We have the Leviathan Tyrannic War
Yeah,
happening.
I think there's just too
Yeah.
much happening, and see, and then you had Lion Lord of the Forest book
Come back and
trilogy. Whatever, Lion came back, and at the end
and
of the
what's going
book,
on with
he
that?
meets
Yeah.
Dante,
Right. Yeah.
and then it
Yeah.
stops,
Yeah.
and
It's
he's trapped on the other side of the Great Rift, and all. Well, you're right. There could be
yeah.
all sorts of like breakaway little empires.
And that could be one of the empires. You could have the Lions start an empire.
Yeah,
Like
which I thought,
I
what I
can't
thought they were going to
yeah.
do.
Maybe they are. I mean,
Yeah.
who knows? It'd be nice to see it happen, and obviously like it opens up all sorts of opportunities. But yeah, that they kind of to circle back to what you were bringing up originally, the idea of a big stompy. I think there's 2 ways you could do it. I think the easiest way to do it was if every Xenos faction that had big monsters or big things just got a detachment which supported
Yeah.
them. That's the easiest way. But you could also do like a Xenos robot book, essentially. So you've got an Imperium robot book, you've got a Chaos robot book, and then you have a Xenos robot book. And like it would be a little bit of a weird Xenos robot codex, because you'd have, I mean, realistically, you would have Eldar, Tyranids, and Tau all in the same codex, which would be a little weird. But like you could do that. You could do a codex that was 3
Well,
different
you've got
factions,
orcs
because you're
too.
not going to have a lot of shit in that. You're
Mhm.
not going to have a huge model line to support lore wise.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, we could have Stampa and a couple of
Oh yeah,
Gorkonauts,
Stompa. That's true. That's true.
Morkonauts versus
Yeah. Orcs
Knights.
too.
But then once again, they've got to have like they don't have battle line troops.
Well, and that's the way that you just do. I think that you just do it as a detachment.
Yeah.
Like orcs would be super easy if you did a mega stompa or mega gargant or what a gargant. Maybe you did a gargant detachment for orcs, and then their frontline troops are going to be trucks and boys or bikes, and then you're going to have stompas and death dreads and stuff like that that make up the bulk of the army or the bulk of the detachment. And then for Tau, you do something along the same lines where Storm Surge and Riptide are the bulk of your army, but then you're going to have maybe hazard suits, the close combat suits, making up your like objective capturing. Tyranids is really easy. Tyranids is probably the easiest one because there's already a bunch of big monsters. And you just do it as detachments.
Yeah.
I think that would be the way to
And
do
I
it.
and
That would
then
be really
and I
cool.
think that knights should get power suit dudes.
Oh yeah, are they like human knights?
Yeah, the human knight should get
I like
power
that.
suit dudes. I was just saying, how much is what's the point value of a Gorkanaut? What do they?
I think they're like 250.
They're like 250,
Yeah.
and so a
You'd
Stampa is a little less than a knight.
Yeah.
Gorkanaut is Stampa is points wise less than a knight, or about
Right.
the same, and it's bigger.
But you could just, I mean, like realistically, you could just make. I mean, bring back the loot. For the detachment alone, just bring back the looted rules,
Yeah.
and then you've got orcs who have looted Imperial Knights. I mean, there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of
I mean,
options.
you could definitely, because I mean, you look at it, they could just have mega knobs. You could do mega knobs or death dreads.
Right.
Or you could even just do some sort of dreadnought for humans. It would break the lore, but because it would be, I don't want a space marine. I don't want like space marine dreadnoughts, right? That's the whole thing.
Not necessarily, because the technology behind dreadnoughts was not developed for space marines. It was developed for normal people to pilot them.
And of course, they could always
originally
be. That's true. And remember, these are night worlds with lost tech, so it is not breaking lore. It does not have to be a space marine in that. So you could have, you could have dreadnoughts. Of course, I would like it to be the old school walking boxes, but you could have dreadnoughts. Which, by the way, I was looking at my second, third edition dreadnought and comparing that to the current dreads that are coming with the Space Marines.
Yeah.
They're so small.
They are super small. I also I prefer my dreadnoughts with knees. I know that's heresy, but I prefer my dreadnoughts with knees.
But
they always just kind of look like they'll fall down backward, like a toddler, fall down backwards when they want to sit.
Yeah, but if they had some sort of exosuit as frontline troops,
exosuit would be cool.
And then because dreadnoughts and armatures are about the same size, so you wouldn't want to have a dreadnought.
Yeah.
You'd want to have like power suited humans that you could, and also so they could sell a box of them.
Yeah, you'd want something about the size of a crisis suit.
Yeah,
I feel like. I mean, or just
like a mega knob size,
or just like think of like I mean, Sisters of Battle are essentially normal humans in power armor. So just do non over the top religious Sisters of Battle men and women mixed units. It would be pretty easy. There's definitely, I like it. I think there's a lot of meat on that particular bone. That's a really good idea.
And then they could go up against the equivalent that you just give detachments to the Xenos races that already have. And then, of course, you could, the ones that don't really have it, like Necrons, you could give it to them.
Yeah, you just sell more you sell more models.
And then for going against Imperial Guard, you have them going against like Titan killers. And they've got the equivalent of knights with their tanks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could have an Imperial Guard detachment that's just a bunch of super heavy tanks.
Yeah.
There's definitely ways to do it. Or, most of the armies have some sort of heavy support.
Yeah.
So you just use the heavy support as your Titan killers.
So that's my idea.
Knights versus a bunch of tanks would be a fucking cool battle.
It's sort of like 40K without the men.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. So what's your idea?
So I have always kind of struggled with the idea that there is not a Xenos Elite equivalent. And to be perfectly frank here, I'm talking about Adeptus Astartes and certain Adeptus Astartes units and Adeptus Custodes. The entire army for Adeptus Custodes and certain units for the Astartes, are definitely elite units. There's, the Grey
Yeah.
Knights. There's, even to a certain extent, like you just talked about, the Knights themselves, the Imperial Knights themselves kind of fall into this kind of like elite category. Xenos don't really have one. Xenos has a lot of gunline or a lot of horde. And there is some stuff to suggest, here and there, a detachment or big bugs or whatever that kind of feels like it comes about halfway, but it only comes halfway.
Yeah.
What I think they should do is I think that they should pull one of their kind of mentioned a couple of times, heavily expanded in the Fantasy Flight role playing games, but mentioned a couple of times in normal lore. And they're called the Rok'gul. So, to give you guys an idea of what these things look like, the Rok'gul are described as monstrous reptilian creatures, typically standing over 2 meters tall. They have 4 arms, 2 larger arms on their upper bodies, which usually have massive claws and are better for use in close combat, and 2 smaller, more dexterous limbs, which are lower on their body, interior to their body, which are very good for using any sorts of like weaponry or additional tools. Then they've got 4 legs on the bottom. They kind of look like they've been described as like mantis centaurs. If you want to think of like a praying mantis mixed with a centaur a little bit, you get kind of an idea. They are covered in skin that's tough and leathery, which provides natural armor against oncoming attacks. Their faces are dominated by large predatory eyes and mouths filled with sharp teeth, emphasizing their savage nature. Many Rok'gul individuals are heavily augmented with cybernetics, including mechanical limbs, enhanced sensory organs, and various weapon systems integrated directly into their bodies. This blend of flesh and metal adds to their fearsome appearance and combat effectiveness. So, culturally, we don't really know a lot about their culture, but one of the things that is kind of hinted at culturally is as they get better as warriors and as hunters, they're kind of a little bit classified like the Predator from the movie Predators. They will start to augment their body. So they augment their bodies in kind of a mixture of like the Mechanicum and the Space Marine. So if they lose an arm, they're going to graft an augment on to replace the functionality. However, they're also going to make themselves better killers and better hunters by utilizing just like, oh, I'm going to get this, I'm going to willfully put this in my body. So it's a little, column A, column B. So their technologies and methods of warfare, the Rok'gul's technology is a paradoxical mix of crude construction and advanced function. Their starships, known for their speed and firepower, often appear as ramshackle and hastily assembled messes, yet they're highly effective in combat. They're also basically like a giant gun with a ship built around it. These ships are typically equipped with powerful energy weapons and brutal boarding mechanisms designed to latch onto enemy vessels and allow the Rok'gul warriors to swarm on board. You get a little bit of a pirate feel with them. Their personal weapons are equally fearsome, ranging from energy based rifles and cannons to vicious melee weapons designed to tear through armor and flesh alike. Rok'gul cybernetics enhance their already formidable physical capabilities, making them even more dangerous in close quarters combat. Well, their society and behavior. Rok'gul society remains largely unknown, but what little is understood suggests a brutal and hierarchical structure. Leadership is likely determined by strength and combat prowess, with the most powerful and deadly individuals rising to positions of authority. They appear to lack any form of centralized government or culture beyond their insatiable drive for violence and destruction. In battle, Rok'gul are ruthless and relentless. They attack without warning, often targeting weaker or isolated human settlements and ships. Their tactics are brutal and straightforward, relying on overwhelming force and terror to achieve their objectives. Once they engage an enemy, they show no mercy, slaughtering or enslaving any survivors. So Rok'gul come from the Kronos expanse, located in the Halo Star regions on the far side of the Calixis sector. It's accessible through a portion of the warp called the Maw, which is a relatively stable, although incredibly perilous warp passage that connects basically the Kronos expanse to Imperium space. The expanse is a vast and largely uncharted area filled with uncolonized planets, ancient ruins, and hidden dangers. It's within this region that the Rok'gul act as a constant and deadly threat to the Imperium of Man, and encounters with them are often sudden, brutal attacks that leave little room for escape or negotiation. So this is kind of one of these These guys hit expeditionary fleets and they hit rogue traders more than anyone else, because those are the only type of people that are kind of like playing in these uncharted areas of space. But the Rok'gul are also described as having lots of planets, and they terraform planets to fit their unique body type. They're probably at some point going to get their own minor Xenos species full breakdown, where we'll get more into it. But they're pretty crazy. They look really cool too, in my opinion. Their unpredictability and sheer ferocity make them a unique challenge within the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And like many other Xenos threats, the Rok'gul do not follow any discernible pattern or strategy, making them difficult to anticipate and counter. Their raids can come at any time and from any direction, keeping human forces in the area on constant alert. And to kind of go over one of the events that happened, we're going to talk about the fall of Nipson Prize. The imperial world of Nipson's Prize was once held by human colonists, now lost to the Imperium. The inhabitants lived a simple agrarian lifestyle on a planet that possessed long growing seasons. So it's an agri world with very, very long seasons. Very good if you're trying to raise a lot of food. You want those long growing seasons. Most of them live contented, peaceful lives of quiet contemplation and farming. Their advanced technology had started to regress and stagnated to the point where most of their agricultural equipment was primarily powered by native animals. It's kind of interesting because you could mix in here, Megasaurs. Maybe they were,
Hmm.
we don't, if you were to play with this type of planet, you could mix in stuff like that. Vessels associated with House Macau reestablished contact with Nipson's Prize in 784.M41. At that time, they generated agreements to exchange substantial portions of the world's agricultural import in trade for off world communications, information, and a selection of imperial supplies. The arrangement worked effectively for just over a decade of regular shipments and communications. So they were found by a night house, they were reunited, everything. I'm sorry. I think this is a rogue trader house, not a night house. But rogue traders, as you mentioned, have access to knights. So um, they started trading again. Then the Sacred Testament arrived to find the world a toxic wasteland, its population completely eliminated, its landscape devastated with huge craters, and its atmosphere a radioactive hell. Ship sensors suggested that a Rok'gul vessel may have crashed into the surface of the planet, unleashing the scouring radiation. No further details have been recovered, though rumors suggest that House Macau has made several failed attempts to recover the remains of the crashed Xeno starship on the planet. And this kind of gets into a little bit of what the Rok'gul do. So the Rok'gul will take a world and they'll specifically terraform it to be this radioactive hellscape, which suits their living conditions. They essentially thrive in like these radioactive and toxic environments. So a lot of the worlds they take, they do this to that world. And what it appears to us as humans is they're destroying, they're scorched earthing the world. There's not like a lot of thought process into no, they're just making it good for them to live on. You know what I mean?
So what happened? I was just looking them up. So there are a bunch of videos on them, but they're all back and stuff on like Reddit and all. It's all from like 2017, 2018. Did something come out?
They got so they were popularized in the Rogue Trader release by Fantasy Flight
Okay.
Games in the role playing game. They had been kind of mentioned before, but I think what happened was there was like we talk about the synchronicities we talked about synchronicities recently, but we've talked about the synchronicities in like the podcasting world. They were really really hot for a minute. Like everybody within a couple of months, a bunch of different podcasts and lore channels had all released information on them. The Ghoul stars and the Halo stars and the stuff that live there kind of cycle every couple of years. Some portion of that like weird area comes back. And what it really is a lot of the stuff that lives in those areas is more on the like eldritch horror level. And the Rat Ghoul are definitely on the eldritch horror level. So I think as those topics become more popular again, they kind of cycle back in. But there was also rumors at one point that they were going to introduce like a elite or a hero that worked with the Drakari at one point that was going to be a rat ghoul. We ended up getting what are they called? This the Slitheth instead, the snake people.
Mhm.
We got one snake person for the Drukhari for the Dark Eldar, which sucks. That would be a good. That's one of those like there's a one-off kit, but come on, it should have been a kit of 5 or at least a kit of 3. 3 plastic snake people. Come on. Or 3 plastic Rok'gul. You could do it. So for my idea to kind of turn them into an army would be to kind of look at that Custodes level and treat it the same way. So it would be an elite Xenos army focused on high toughness and high weapon skill units, toughness 5 across the entire army, with the starting weapon skill and ballistic skill at 3 plus. So this is not an army of 60 plus dudes. This is an army of like 20 guys, maybe. You're looking at a Custodes. Look at a
Yeah.
Custodes force. Rok'gul are going to be about the same. I would also standardize their movement at 7 inches across the entire army, and I would not give them any fast attack options. However, to balance that out, I would give them upgrades which can turn any unit into deep strikers. So essentially, you can deep strike the entire army. And that kind of goes with their lore of sort of ambushing and hunting people. And it's not ambushing, they're ambush predators the way a crocodile is an ambush predator. Like technically it's true, but at the same time, a crocodile is definitely an alpha predator, and you know, a crocodile is going to lay in wait for you, and that's going to rip you apart. Rok'gul are going to wait and wait for you and rip you apart. They're not ambushing you because they're weak. They're ambushing you because that's what they do. They're the predator. In a lot of ways, they just speak Predator to me as far as the Predator movies, the Alien versus Predator
Mhm.
style
Yeah.
goes. Army wide, I would say that their saves get no lower than 4 plus, and that's without armor. Obviously, as you armor them up, or as they become HQs or elites, or they start getting more augments, that's going to drop. It's going to come into that like 2 plus, 3 plus range. Their HQ and elites would rock a solid 2 plus weapon skill and ballistic skill. Kind of looking again at the Custodes book a little bit as the blueprint.
Mhm.
And I would say that their named HQs and captains would be highly augmented with the use of powered melee attacks and weapon attacks. And I would even give them the ability to do like kind of like pistol attacks.
Mhm.
One of the you can use pistols in close combat. I would do a lot of that, almost that mechanicum style where like they get an extra pistol attack from like a head weapon or whatever. And again, it would just be the HQs and elites. I'd say probably 6 attacks each. And I would theme the HQ units off of stuff that feels like the Predator. I can't remember, what are the Predator called? The Yonti
Yeah.
or the Yon? Yeah, the
Something like
Yonti.
that.
I would base it off that. I wouldn't call them captains, obviously. It would be themed a little bit more to fit with them. So maybe like a pirate lord or whatever. Any of their named ones, I would make a little bit more powerful, kind of like Gazgul or Abaddon. You get a big bad, and you can do an elite army detachment with Chaos Space Marines. Abaddon's a great example of just like an insanely buff character. I would also do, your battle line troops would be your pretty unaugmented, pretty unarmored standard Rok'gul. And I would say that they would come in like groups of 5, a starting unit of battle line troops, probably giving you the option to expand it to 10 guys. And then I'm sure you remember this, but I would almost kind of go back to that old Catachan codex from like 3.5, 4th edition, where, there were Catachan troops, but then you could do like the Catachan Devils. And the Catachan Devils were just the Catachan troops, but they were the veterans. And you kind
Mhm.
of modeled them a little bit differently yourself. And whether or not that was different sprue options, or if it was like with the Catachan Devils, it was left up to you. You could paint them differently, or you could, you know, equip them with different guns or whatever. And that's almost how I would play with these guys. I would almost kind of like go back to that 3.5 to 7th edition range, where if you want to, your normal Rat Ghoul troops come with, maybe 5 different power weapons, 3 of them one-handed, 2 of them two-handed, and then a couple of, guns for their lower limbs. But then if you wanted like the chainsword rat ghoul, you buy that and then he's no longer, that rat ghoul is no longer a troop. He's now an elite. He's now a named
Well, I mean,
he might not be a
I think it's a good
hero, but
idea.
he's a named character.
Well, this is 10th edition, so loadout is all the
Yeah.
same cost. But
Right.
no, I like
Right.
it. You know, the one characteristic about elites is they really only have like 5 units total.
Right. It'd be a very, very small army.
So, you
It'd
know,
be
like with Grey
yeah.
Knights, you've got Terminators, you have Strikes, you have Nemesis, Grey Knights in 2 flavors, right? One's just the boss, and one isn't a
Right.
boss. And I think you can toss them into a Rhino. And I'm probably
Yeah.
missing something in there, but that's about it. Custodes, you have like, you got the guys on
You
the,
got Dawn bikes.
yeah, you got the
You got
bikes,
shield guys, you got spear guys,
and you
you
have
got bike
gun guys.
guys. Yeah, and you have
So
gun
you've got
guys.
like
Yeah.
four guys plus heroes. You've got 4 unit
Yeah.
types plus heroes, and you could
And
toss
then
them
a
in a
dreadnought.
transport.
Yeah,
Yeah, they've
dreadnought
got a
and
dreadnought.
transport. For
But
these
still,
guys, I wouldn't do a transport. I think that it makes them scarier. Maybe you would do like an infiltrator unit instead of a transport, if that
so
makes any
you
sense.
just give them the infiltrator, the ambush thing, so where they set up.
Yeah, ahead of time, wherever
They
they
could
want.
set up into, or on their first move they're set up into the non setup zone, whatever you
Or
call
you
that.
play with the Voton stuff where they've got the teleport. You know, Voton had the
Yeah.
teleport crest. You give them a teleport augmetic, where essentially they can teleport within 9 inches of any unit at any
Well, I mean
time
that's the
instead of
same as
yeah.
every unit has that. You know, you
Right.
probably have to. You know, you have Terminators have that of all flavors.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that. But
Orcs have telepotas.
yeah.
Weird boys can do that, or you can do the shock jump dragster. So everybody has that. I think that's good. I mean, if they move, as long as at least some version of them can move as fast. See, the problem that I see. Okay, now I'm going back.
Mhm.
I see a problem.
Okay.
You either have to give them a fast scuttling unit, and the rest are slow scuttling units.
Okay. So I got a
Well,
thing for that actually. The reason that I gave them a 7-inch standard across the army is there would only be two variations for that. The first variation would be the dreadnought variation. So the very, very veteran ones, the very heavily damaged ones, would drop to like a 5-inch move, like a Terminator, and then their model would be heavily augmented. So like mechanical legs or maybe like tracks for the lower body. Like these are the ones that have been massively damaged. You know, they've gone through the worst of the shit, essentially. They're the old beards. And for the faster units with what you're talking about, I would lean on the fact that they're slavers. So they could take auxiliary units from any army,
mm.
period. And there would be like a breakdown cost for that. So they might have enslaved space marines. Would they be normal line space marines? Obviously not. They'd probably be more like space marine scouts or whatever. But then
Mm-hmm.
they could take fire warriors from Tau. They could take Eldar guardians. Whatever they've managed to capture and enslave, you could use as like a main scuttling army.
So
Or the other thought that I had was something a little bit more like the scarab swarms from the Necrons, but instead of being mechanical, they're like whatever, like they're like more like rippers. They're like some nasty bug thing.
I have a problem with this, and I'll let you know
Okay.
why. Because I think
Okay.
you just moved away from your elite army. Now you've got
Okay.
basically elite HQs with cannon fodder.
Yeah, I can see that. I can yeah.
Because if you've got all these like enslaved armies, they're just the regular enslaved armies, and the whole thing
Well,
about
you can't use that many auxilia troops or yeah, you can't use that many auxilia troops in armies that have auxiliary troops, right? Like that's part of it. Like
yeah,
you're
but the whole
not
thing about
supposed
the
to
elite
have
army is that you're fielding an army with 30 guys total.
true. Okay. Yeah, yeah. I see your point. I see your point.
So it's like the way I see it. If you've got like slavers that could bring in these auxiliary troops, how is that different from knobs
Dark
with
Eldar, yeah.
or anything else? Um, Basically, what you're doing is like, well, you've got your aliens are are your non-battle line, and your slaves are your battle line, and then that's just
Right.
you have elite units within an army. You just get to pick units from any army, or pick battle line units from X number of armies. I think if you want to do an elite Xenos army, you
Okay.
need to lean into the elite Xenos army. So,
Okay.
because like other armies have like this is an elite detachment, which is the one for the orcs. That's sort of an elite detachment, sort of like Dread Mob or something. But they still have like
Yeah.
they have
You're talking about the one where like every unit can have a hero attached to it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, what happens is you want to have a few number of units, and every unit is a killer. Like you don't have room to fill it with non-elite units. Like
So what would you do for an elite unit for these guys? Would you do, or I'm sorry, for like a fast scuttling unit for these guys? Would you do
y-
like augmented with wings essentially? Like they give up their legs, they give up their lower leg. Yeah, they give up their lower legs for
well,
wing
you could have
attachments.
them power armored and non-power armored, which is basically what you were saying. And the power armor just has a longer because okay, so to take I don't know if this I'm not up on the Space Marine or the other rules, but okay, so you know how like with some of the detachments with orcs, the truck can move 6,
Right.
the guys
Right.
can get off and charge 6. So effectively
Yeah.
you have boys with a 12-inch range. You
Right.
need to
Right.
have if they don't have vehicles, they need to have something that gives them more than a 7-inch range, I would think, because because otherwise they just might be like outpaced going to objectives or something. So maybe
Well,
do
you
give
could
them
do
tech. They're
like,
highly technological. Give them I don't know bikes.
yeah.
Have a unit that has bikes, and the rest don't.
Or you could do something like I mean they've got 4 upper limbs, so they sacrifice, one set of upper limbs for wings so they can drop on people would be kind of
Yeah,
cool.
something like that.
Or
So
or maybe you have close combat only guys that have like close combat like gauntlets on all
yeah,
4
that's
of
what I would do.
their
I would
upper
definitely have.
limbs so they could run on all 8, because if you're running on all 8s, right, you're going to move faster.
I would have 3 unit types:
Okay. Yeah.
close
Okay.
assault, gun line,
Right. And something fast.
or something fast, right? Yeah, and then so I would probably say that your basic your battle line would be your basic sort of close assault.
Yeah, so you got your like power weapons on top, and then your like lighter weapons on, maybe like essentially a
You've got like
bolter,
like
a bolt
two
pistol or whatever.
yeah 2 light weapons, two and blades, right?
Right.
And then you've got your sort of your heavier dudes, which are your shooters, and they've got maybe 2 heavy weapons that it takes 2 arms to operate. Like one arm is holding it, and the smaller arm is firing it, or something like that. So, but they're heavier weapons, right? So
Right.
they're bigger guns, and they could have different loadouts, for whatever. And then you have some sort of fast attack, which would be the equivalent of a grav biker. So wings could be good if you allow for that, or it could be technological. I mean, wouldn't it be sort of cool to have like these guys on some sort of bike with the 2 lower limbs holding the handlebars and the 2 upper limbs are like firing weapons? You could do something like that. They're a highly tech race, so what do they just like walk everywhere?
Yeah.
No, you
Well,
could
I mean,
give them
yeah.
and people like vehicles.
Right. That's true. That's true.
People
I
like
was just
vehicle models.
I was just thinking of like, like centaurs, you always think of being a little bit faster, I guess.
They don't look
But I
fast.
mean, that could be the tech. The tech could be that their lower legs are just super, that they've got lower legs that are essentially super formed or whatever, not super,
Mhm.
like replaced with bionics that make them
Yeah,
essentially charge like
something,
horses.
but, I think those are the 3 main. You could have some heroes and some other things in there.
Right. Well, and I would take whatever that main unit you build is, whatever the main unit you sculpt is, becomes the base. Your main battle line of 5 guys becomes your base for everything else in the army.
Yeah.
You really steer into the fact that these things just don't look human enough to be on a level where like dimorphism is something that you think of when you look at them.
Yeah.
Like they all essentially kind of look the same. Like they might change their bodies differently and they might ornament themselves differently, but they essentially all kind of look the same, because that it's even more into that grim Cthulhuan horror.
Yeah. So I
But
was just looking. So like the most elite human force, right? Custodes. I'm not
right.
talking about heroes, right?
Yeah.
You've got the Alurus, which are the Terminators.
Right.
You've got a Blade Champion, but that's a Blade Champion. That's not what you've got Custodian Guard. That's 2.
Right.
Custodian Wardens, that's 3. They are mixing in the Sisters of Silence with this,
Yeah.
but let's take those out right now because you can build your whole force without using the Sisters of Silence.
Right. And you kind of I feel like you want to do the same thing with these guys. Even if you do have like a subjugated race that's in there,
Yeah,
you don't want to have to rely on them.
you've got a Dreadnought.
Right. And these guys
And you
would
got
definitely have a dreadnought equivalent.
Yeah, and you've got bikes.
And yeah, bikes. Yeah.
And then you also have the Venerable Land Raider. And other than that, they're just heroes, right? You've got, you've got the Blade Captain and the Blade Guard. You've got,
Right. Yeah,
the
they're
Shield
just
Captain in Alurus Terminator armor, and you've got the regular
right.
Terminator armor, right? Right. Those are just the captains. But you have 6 units if you include the Land Raider, 5 units if you don't. That's it.
And I wouldn't give these guys a transport. I think you get around that with the infiltrate and the
Yeah.
teleport stuff.
Well,
and I think it's just I just
you
don't
could
think
you could treat them like you do with Tyranids. Tyranids don't have transports.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the way to get around the speed thing too. You've got okay, so I'm going to revise a little bit. You have your normal battle line warriors, which have some sort of standard armor. It's not heavy; it's just a standard armor, like guardsman armor plate, essentially.
Right.
Okay. Those guys get the option to be built either with a two-handed weapon in their upper arms or a two-handed weapon in their lower arms. And then if you build them with a two-handed weapon in their upper arms, their lower arms have the equivalent of like pistols. If you build them with a two-handed weapon in their lower arms, their upper arms have the equivalent of like blades, essentially, like knives or swords. Then you've got the heavily armored ones that are wearing like full, like almost knight style armor. And I would really lean into that gothic knight look and not the Baroque knight look like we have with Space Marines and Custodes, that like gothic dark bladed armor look, kind of like more like Sauron's troops style. So those are your heavies, and your heavies, like you mentioned, they either have, kind of like Tyranid arm combinations.
Yeah.
Their lower arms are like a big gun, and their upper arms are melee attack only, like claw attacks only, or they've got essentially like big blades on their upper arms and then like some close combat, like pistol level attack again. So you kind of get the same thing, but they essentially serve that Terminator role.
Yeah.
Then you have the light armored guys that have the lower bodies. Their lower bodies are augmented. So instead of the augmetics being on their upper torso, it's on their lower torso. And those are your fast attack guys.
Yeah.
Those guys move. Those guys have, I would give them like Atlan Outrider, not Rough Rider. What are the Rough Riders called now?
They're not called Rough Riders?
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the guys on horses.
The horse guys. The horse guys from the Imperial Guard.
Right. So you'd have these centaur guys riding horses to make them faster.
No. They augment their lower bodies. Yeah. Yeah. Centaurs riding centaurs.
Oh, no. I just saw a fantasy meme where the guy was like,
yeah,
I challenge to go to the centaur. I challenge you to a horse race. And the centaur is like, you think you're going to win? And he's like, well, you got to find a horse to ride first.
Right.
Those are the rules.
I would do. I would do these guys augments on their lower bodies that make them essentially like centaurs. They move like centaurs, so they move faster than everybody else. I would do a dreadnought variant, so the ones that are like super damaged.
Yeah,
and maybe it's even it'd be really cool. It'd be cool if it was like their upper torso, and then there was no lower torso anymore. Like even like think of like the Paragon war suits from Sisters of Battle, but you like see the exposed spine going down into the biomechanical body that's been built as like a replacement. Really push the like creepy horror version of their
I
dreadnought,
was
and then
thinking about
all of
the,
the heroes would just be like
you
variants
know how the
essentially.
Slann mage is sitting in the floating chair? I was just seeing
Oh
like
yeah, yeah. Oh, for their
half of this
dreadnought.
center is just it's just the upper part of the torso that's in the floating
Yeah,
chair.
exactly. Like something super, just super dark and demented. Or even like instead of the chair floating like it does with the slan, it's the
You could
upper
have legs.
torso and like yeah, and it's got like big bulky like dune crawler legs
I
essentially,
was
but
thinking like
obviously like
spiky spider
Xenos.
legs, but you know, whichever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the dune crawler legs are kind of spiky
Yeah.
spider legs. But yeah, no, I think it's there's definitely it would be neat. It would be neat to have an elite Xenos,
Yeah.
and maybe this isn't the right way. The other thing that I had thought of just super quickly, because we kind of ran a little bit longer, would be an enslaver army. So with the enslaver army, you pick any army that you want to play, but then you get essentially like it's a box and probably just a normal troop size box because you already have to buy an Imperial Guard
Yeah.
army or whatever it is, but it just comes with a bunch of enslavers, and then you put the enslavers on like your HQ units and on certain like on your sergeants and stuff. You just have the enslaver like behind it with the tentacles like wrapped into the quarter.
Oh no, even better.
That would
What
be
was
neat.
the from Futurama where they've got the jellyfish that goes on the side of their head?
Yeah, right. Yeah, totally something like that. But enslavers are a super cool thing. There's a lot. And
Yeah.
the truth is, there's a lot of stuff out there. When we didn't even get to like squats with bikes coming back, or
Yeah,
how to fix and
I was
yeah.
trying to figure out
There's
what
so
to
many
do,
other
and
things.
I was talking to them. It's like
Yeah,
I like the old school beer swilling, runty, bearded squats.
squats.
And by the way,
Well, the
they're
other
not all male. They just both men and women have beards. They could tell themselves. They could tell the difference between male and female.
yeah,
Just we can't. So it all looks like they're all guys, but they're actually not.
there's more than one joke in The Hobbit about or Lord of the Rings
Yes,
about that.
you have to look under their
um,
beard.
Yeah, to look under their beard. You had to figure it out. The other thing, when you were talking about knights, the thing that popped into my head really, really briefly was the Voton. The Voton could
Oh
totally
yeah.
have a knights level expansion. It would make a lot of sense. And they'd be cool too. I imagine they'd be very different than Imperial. They'd be similar but different
I always
as all of
wanted
their
those
tech
for
is.
Epic, and people have definitely done
Squat
squat
knights.
nights, and there are rules for them for fan made rules for Epic for them.
That's super
And I
awesome.
think they actually have a couple of creators actually having. They might be on what is it, one page rules. Their
Okay.
space dwarves might have a knight equivalent. I don't know.
Gotcha. I'll have to take a
But
look.
yeah, there's so many things like we did not talk about the Slan. We did not talk. Well, I
Yeah.
believe that Emmy is going to be when she does her bit, might be
Should,
doing Dark Mechanicum, which I think would be a
yep.
wonderful new. I mean, it's just
And very
Mechanicum but
easy.
dark. Well, that's
And
like
Trader
how.
Guard.
Yeah, all those are easy to do. I mean, it's just the same thing. It's like you have knights and you have chaos knights. What are chaos knights? They're spiky regular knights.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many there's so many opportunities. The other thing that we could do that we should do at some point is we've introduced an Innsmouth in our Innsmouth related Innsmouth, however you say it. In our own lore, our Carcosan sector lore, we introduced that there was a Saurian Forerunner race. So we could develop that more. That would be another cool. But and these are all, I mean, we're spitballing here,
Yeah.
guys, as far as, doing like a round table. This is not something that we put more than a week's worth of thought into developing or kind
Oh
of
no, I've been
answering
thinking about the
questions
knights
on.
for years. Just to let you know, that's what's
I've
been in
been
the back of my
thinking
head.
I've been thinking about the Rok'gul for years too, but it's always been like just use the Custodes book and change and then I was like, no, it's got to change, and that's why I was kind of trying to put rules to it.
That's why you have like Rat Mech, and I know you've got a Rat Mech army, and so do
Right.
other people. But those are
Right.
just Ad Mech, but they're rats.
Yeah,
Which, by the way,
I'm just
is
putting a
fine.
different flavor on something that
Yeah.
exists. Yeah. And that's how a lot of this stuff happens. I have Gene Stealer Knights, and there are no special rules for my Gene Stealer Cult Knights. They are just an Imperial Knight army with more arms and more weird things because they are Gene Stealer Knights. That's they're just Gene Stealers infected a night household, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, it's that simple.
And there's lots of there are a lot of opportunities if you play with a group that doesn't mind
Yeah.
non-official builds or
Yeah.
non-official, you can proxy everything. Just remember when you do this sort of thing, make sure they're understandable. So
Yes.
make sure
Yeah.
that people look at it and go, okay, that's a rat, but it's definitely Skitarii.
Right.
Not that, what the hell's that? I mean, it's hard enough keeping up with all the different armies. Make things
Yeah.
identifiable. That's all I have to say.
I'll try to share some of the pictures of my rat mech stuff up again because it's been a while. But exactly what Chalk's saying. I used Cawdor gangers for their bodies. They have rat heads, but all of their weapons, their backpacks, their arms and legs are all Skitarii parts. So it's very easy to see that there's Mechanicus in them. And then some of them, I did a bunch of the horses. I can't remember what I cannot for the life of me remember what the AdMech horses are called, the sulfur dogs.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I did all of that, and all I did for them was I did a head replacement.
Mhm.
It's just a rat head on top of the normal Skitarii rider's body. So there's definitely and that's the sort of stuff, that's a heavily kit bashed army that I could take to an official tournament. The TO or an official tournament organizer would let me run that stuff. One, it's all Games Workshop parts kit bash, but two, it's really obvious that it's a Mechanicus army at the end of the day.
It's like I've got a whole bunch of dried up paint pots that have to go to become kilocans.
Kilocans, there you go.
All right, I'm not going to.
So that'll.
We're leaving now. We are leaving now. I'm going to stop interrupting.
So that'll wrap it up on our episode for our Compliance Day special. The armies that we would like to see. What are the armies you guys would like to see? Is there something we left out? Is there something about Knights or the Rok'gul that we left on the cutting room floor? Go ahead, either email us at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or find us on Discord. You can join our Discord community and join in conversations about existing lore, world building, gaming, or talk to us about this episode. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, or you can check out our website, underthehiveofmadness.com. I promise you, we are working on updating the website. It's just it requires all of us taking professional photos of ourselves and then professional photos of our armies. So we're getting there. You can check out our link tree to find all sorts of links to keep up with everybody in the cast's hobby progress and obviously all of the other weird shenanigans we get to on the internet. As we've mentioned at least once or twice in the episode, links and spellings are always in the show notes for this stuff so you can find us as easily as possible.
Help the podcast grow by liking and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast fix. Our home is Spotify, but you can find us on Audible, Apple Podcasts, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, and more. Support us through Patreon at www.com/underthehiveofmadness. Join an awesome crew for access to extra content and a chance to snag some cool merch in our monthly giveaway.
We might be lost somewhere down here in the Rust Reef, harried by the echoing chants of some mad cult, with the hounds of some eldritch monstrosity snapping at our heels. But at least I have this nice new rotary plasma cannon and a target-rich environment to test it out in. Jock, you're always showing me the best of times.
I aim to please, and you better keep your aim straight.
I aim to hit everything over there. They can't stop our signal no matter how deep underground they force us, or how large of a shadow the Administratum attempts to cast. We are your light of truthiness in the uncertain frosty cold of long night, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Reminding all of you Chemrats, hive mice, and sump ghoulies to keep those dials fixed right here. Same ratty frequency for a dose of the same ratty-ass attitude.
Listen well, child, and remember this warning. When the shadows grow long and the night air turns cold, steer clear of the depths where the four-armed emperors hold sway. They are creatures of darkness, with eyes that see through the darkest night and claws that can snatch you away in an instant. Stray too far from the safety of the light, and you may find yourself in their grasp, where no soul remains unscathed. Always stay close, always be wary, for the Emperor's hunger is never sated, and their reach is ever long.
And read a book.
Don't loot the corpses.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.